Hello and welcome to the second module of the Michael Scott School of Management. Tonight we will be going over our 5 most important recommendations to identify your intent. So welcome to Michael Scott School. Tonight we're going to be going over these 5 points. We're going to help you define your general purpose for your future training sessions. We're going to teach you how to create a presentation objective. We're going to help you determine your level of engagement, how to stay on track. There's no need to stray tonight. Number 5, how can you evaluate your success? And we're going to follow it up with any questions. So let me take a moment and introduce ourselves. I am Lydia Bordeaux. I am the Office Administrator for Dunder Mifflin, a paper company which is a division of Sabre. We also have Cody Cross, Carla Campos, Kyle Chung, Eric Doss, and Tristan Castor. So tonight, we are going to start off with some fun activities. The paper in front of you is going to be our wonderful presentation that we have with you guys. It's going to be Identify Your Intent. This was created by Dwight Schrute. Unfortunately, it is harvest season over at Schrute Farm, so he is unable to be here with us tonight, but he did want to give you guys a message at the top. Please respond to all of the following prompts. All responses should refer to your upcoming training sessions. Fact, this exercise is mandatory. Fact, you will be expected to share your responses. We do have some nice little dundies up here for the winners of each session that you will get to take home and display proudly on your night table at home or for your family, friends, or even at work. So you can enjoy those accordingly. So if you are unfamiliar with the Dundies, we're going to give you a quick little glimpse from last year's Dundee at our office, so we hope you enjoy.
Michael.
Yes?
Try expanding us from our bathroom.
Okay, well that's ridiculous, so just don't, I don't have time for this right now.
There needs to be repercussions.
Just
for
don't
people's
talk,
behavior.
don't touch. Okay, look, I know there have been a lot of rumors flying around about the Dundies this year, how there is no money and how there is no food and how the jokes are really bad. But what the hell, everybody? I mean, God, the Dundies are about the best in every one of us. Can't you see that? I mean, okay, we can do better. So tonight, for the first time, we are inviting all of your friends and family to attend the awards with us.
Yes.
Yeah, not bad, right? So let's make this the best Dundies ever.
Best Dundies ever. Welcome to the 8th Annual Dundies Awards. Before we get started, a few announcements. Keep your acceptance speeches short. I have wrap it up music, and I'm not afraid to use it. Devin. Dave, drop a low one. The Dundies! How can I explain it? I'll work you like a hate it. I'm something that you all made it. You never have to work so hard and feel no one notices. You're just a name and number, and no one even says hello. How many brothers out there know this what I'm getting at?
The Dundies are kind of like a kid's birthday party, and you go, and there's really nothing for you to do there, but the kid's having a really good time, so you're kind of there. That's kind of what it's like.
The waitress tripped on the cord.
So as you can see, we have no budget, we have no food, but we have plenty for you to do this evening. So we hope you enjoy the next 5 modules, and I will be back after each module to help guide you through the learning checkpoints. All right, Cody is going to help define your general purpose.
So the first recommendation that we have is to define your general purpose. It's as simple as it sounds. It's just the general idea of what your presentation is about. So you have to know what you're talking about before you present it. And so to do that, you have to first consider your level of engagement that you want from your audience. And that depends on the situation, whether it's a what, how, or who type of situation. So if you're doing a training session like we are, we're explaining what something is or how to identify your intent. So we're going to tailor our training session to match that. You want to keep your general purpose very simple. It's only about 4 or 5 words. But you also want it to be scalable because later on you're going to turn it into your presentation objectives that Carla's going to talk about later. And for example, our general purpose is to teach 5 recommendations to identify a presenter's intent. So some tips that are going to win you at Dundee tonight is keep it simple. Just want, like I mentioned a second ago, 5 words. Very simple. You don't need to throw in things that are going to be part of the presentation objective later on. You want to start them with an action verb. And like I just mentioned, don't include presentation objective elements. If you do these things, your audience is going to understand your purpose immediately. The audience is more likely to retain your information presented. And it's going to keep you and the rest of your presenters on track. So some tips that will get you, that'll lose you to Dundee and get you one of these participation ribbons is to create your presentation objectives before your general purpose. That's going to make it really confusing. It's going to make your purpose unclear. You'll go off track. You can also use the incorrect level of engagement, which is going to make your audience more or less involved when you want. So if you are expecting a very involved presentation and you use the incorrect level of engagement, you may not get that and your presentation may fall flat. And that goes along with using the wrong what, how, or who, which will confuse the audience and it's going to prevent the appropriate takeaway.
Okay, who is ready for their first learning checkpoint? Everybody have the piece of paper from the official Dwight K. Shirt, Assistant Regional Manager. Have that in front of you. We're going to take the next 60 seconds, and each of you are going to identify your general purpose for your group's training session. So you got 60 seconds, go.
If anyone has any questions, let us know.
Absolutely.
This is specifically to our training session?
Correct, yes. This is part of your presentation.
Okay, thank you.
More seconds.
Okay, would anyone like to offer their general purpose? Yes.
Tips on how to grab our audience.
Okay, so congratulations, you get a Dundee. You can put it proudly on your desk at home. So we'll make sure to grab one of these at the end, okay?
Okay.
All right, so moving on. Go ahead, Carla.
So the second tip that we have for identifying your intent is to create your presentation objective. And basically what this means is the statement that you create from the very beginning, from when you start your rough draft, and you use it all the way up until you answer your last question of your presentation. It basically helps you stay focused and stay on track throughout the entire process and answer questions properly. Some tips that we have, or some points that we have to make sure that your presentation objective is effective, is to make sure that it's results-oriented and audience-based, audience-focused. So basically what this means is that your audience should be your number one priority throughout the entire thing. Figure out what you want your audience to gain from it, and then use that as the basis for your entire presentation. The second key point is to use it to evaluate your success. And as Tristan will explain later on, this should mainly be towards the end of your presentation. You should make sure that this was able to tell you whether or not your presentation was successful or what you need to improve on. And the last key point is that you should use it to stay on track. That's the main point of having a presentation objective, is to really just stay on time, stay on track, and stay focused. Some Dundee winning tips would again be audience focus. Like I said, figure out what you want from your audience and then just take that and build your entire presentation with it. Your objectives should be measurable and attainable, whether it's surveys or speeches or worksheets. You should be able to figure out whether or not your presentation was successful and whether or not you were able to attain whatever goal it is that you had. And lastly, you should identify how you want to attain such goals. Some positive outcomes from this would be that it's easier for both you and the audience to stay focused throughout the entire thing and maintain able to prioritize the important topics as well as leave all the fluff stuff out and emphasize what you really need to emphasize and what you want your audience to take away from it, as well as, like I said, stay on track, which is the main point of everything. Some Dundee losing tips is using feelings as a way to measure your goal. I know a lot of times our goal is to say, I want the audience to feel inspired or feel happy or angry. The truth is that feelings are often very difficult to measure, so it's best to just stay clear from using this as a level of measurement. You should also avoid waiting until the last minute. Like I said, your presentation objective is something that you should be using when you create your rough draft. Use it through the entire process, and wait until the last minute will just cause it to be useless, and there's really no point in waiting for them. And then the last thing, again, forgetting about your audience. If you forget about your audience, you forget about your purpose, and your presentation will just not be successful. Some negative outcomes would be there's no way to evaluate the success of your efforts. You might have too much information, which will cause your audience to lose engagement, lose focus, and for yourself to lose track of what you were trying to say. And last but not least, like I said, if your presentation is not, if your objective is not created at the very beginning, it will just not be useful.
All right, so we are in learning checkpoint number 2. Everyone is going to create a presentation objective example for your group's training session. So for this one, we're going to give you about 90 seconds, so that way you can think of a particular objective example.
Alright, and we did fail to mention that you are able to work with your group because this is for your entire group presentation. So if you were to work with your group, it will definitely help you better prepare yourself for the future and your presentation. What's up? Going back on what you guys said, determining what kind of knowledge they may have, or what kind of ideas generation, actively in their own people to that. So definitely that is one way to
We hear a lot of great conversations, so we're going to let you guys have another minute so you can work with your teams a little bit more.
What's up, guys? Example of presentation objective? Yeah. So a general presentation objective can be is to change someone's mind about something or teach someone how to do something. So like for them, they were teaching you how to analyze your audience and see what kind of audience you're using. Today we're going to talk about how to kind of generalize what your presentation is. Correct. Yeah.
All right, 10 more seconds. All right, does anybody want to share their example? Go ahead.
One of the objectives is to teach how to craft the content of the presentation.
Good job, excellent. All right, you get a Dundee. Good for you.
Alright, so now I will be taking over this next presentation. So I'm going to be discussing determining your levels of engagement. So before we start, I want to ask a question. How many people has slept during their class? Alright, I'm pretty sure about most everyone has slept through their class. Me, about 80% of my college career has been sleeping in class. Now, what can cause that? So we're going to look at the balancing between audience involvement and presentation control. So when a professor is taking too much of that control of the presentation, kind of just lecture-based, monotone, everyone knows those kind of professors, those are going to make you boring and you're going to fall asleep. But if you get a professor that would engage them, such as the calculus class, they're teaching you step by step, they're going around asking you questions like, do you understand this? It brings a level of engagement for that audience. As we move forward, so we want to base the level of engagement on the purpose of the presentation. Like Cody had mentioned earlier, that is going to definitely determine what level of engagement you want to present. And those can be And then we're going to decide what presentation we want to do for the audience. So is the presentation going to be a tell presentation? So you're trying to tell someone something, you're trying to sell something to someone or to an audience. You're going to try to consult with them or join with them. Now, if you look at the picture to the right, it basically is a kind of level of where you want to be. So when I tell you want more of that focus on control of content. So you want to be in control of that presentation. But now as we keep going forward, sell, consult, and join, then you want to have more of that audience involvement. It makes it easier for them to understand and be a part of that presentation. And again, the biggest key point we want to take away from this is if you want change from the audience, it requires involvement. So next we're going to look at a video from the office about audience engagement and an example of a skit. So going forward, we're going to go ahead and play this video.
Here's what's going to happen. I am going to have to fix you, manage you to, on a more personal scale, a more micro form of management. Jim, what is that called?
Micromanagement.
Boom, yes. Now Jim is going to be the client. Dwight, you're going to have to sell to him without being aggressive, hostile, or difficult. Let's go.
All right, fine. Ring, ring. Hello. Hello, this is Dwight Schrute from the Dunder Mifflin Paper Company. Wow, that's great, because I need paper. Excellent, then you are in luck, because we are having a limited time offer only on everything. Wow, this is my lucky day.
Ask him his name.
What is your name, sir? I am Bill Buttlicker. Really, that's your real name? How dare you? My family built this country, by the way.
Be respectful, Dwight, please.
Yes, Michael. Could you hold on 1 second? That's my other line. What? No, but I... Hello? Yeah. No, I'm just on the phone with this stupid salesman. He's so dumb. Probably just gonna keep him on the line forever and not buy anything. Okay.
It's up to you to change his mind.
Sorry, that was a family emergency. Oh no, what's wrong? You know what? That's private.
Boundaries, Dwight, come on.
I'm sorry, Mr. Buttlicker. As I was saying, we're having a limited... Speak up a little bit louder, I'm hard of hearing.
He's hard if he's an old man.
Okay, as I was saying, right now we are having...
Talk louder.
Okay, our prices have never been lower.
Son, you have to talk louder.
Never been lower. Louder, son! Buttlicker! Our prices have never been lower!
Stop it! That's totally inappropriate. You never yell at the client. You
Now
never
you listen to
yell.
me, sir.
Here we go.
The 3 words I would describe you as is aggressive, hostile, and definitely difficult.
Give me the phone.
Mr. Buttlicker. I'm irate right
Give
now.
me the phone.
Please give me
It's
another
irate.
chance.
Give me the phone.
Mr. Buttlicker.
Give me the phone.
I have to patrol with my boss.
Well, I should hope so. Who is this?
Hello, this is Michael Scott, Regional Manager.
Well, this is William M. Buttlicker.
Hello, Mr. Buttlicker. How may we help you?
Michael, I like the sound of your voice. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna buy $1 million worth of paper products today. See how it's done?
Thank you very much, sir. I don't think you'll regret it.
You're the master. There is one condition, Michael.
Yes.
You have to fire the salesman that treated me so terribly. Don't do it, Michael.
It's $1 million sale.
All right, so what we can take away from this is, Michael is trying to teach them how to properly sell a, paper to a vendor or to a client. And the way they did it is to engage both of them into a conversation and practice it in person. Instead of, just going into like a meeting and just telling them what to do and this is what you're supposed to do. He brought them into a room, gave them an opportunity to actually practice it and, learn from that experience-wise. So some Dundee winning tips when it comes to determining your level of engagement. So 1, determining your type of presentation definitely helps with determining that level of engagement, such as Cody had mentioned earlier on today. Balance audio and presenter control, and include enriching activities. Again, these are Dundee winning tips. Some positive outcomes from each of these tips can lead to, again, determining that level of engagement you need to engage with that audience. Again, it's a tell, sell, join, or consult. Creates an enriching environment. So basically what that means is, if we were to have a good audience control going back on the calculus problem, if the audience is engaged, it further solidifies that idea and that knowledge of what to do and how to do it. And including enriching activities, and again, increases that audience involvement and leaves kind of a takeaway from what, was presented or what was discussed during that time. So moving forward to some Dundee losing tips. So lack of audience involvement, lack of control over the presentation can be sung in determining the presentation type incorrectly. So the negative outcomes from each of these losing tips can be lead to boredom and lose its audience attention. So that's when you have too much control of the presentation. Your audience is just going to start falling asleep, on their phones, or finding out what the next NBA Finals is going to be. Whether it's lacking control of the presentation. So if we gave you entirety control of our presentation, we will not be able to teach you anything. It'll become more of kind of a social gathering like we do on just a normal day in a coffee shop or something like that. And then if you determine that presentation type incorrectly, it can lead to an incorrect approach on the audience. So again, if you're trying to tell something, you don't want that in the audience. You don't want them to have too much control. But if you want them to join in on something, join in on your presentation, you want high end of that audience involvement. So moving forward, I'm going to hand it off to Lydia to do checkpoint 3.
All right, we're on our third checkpoint. You and your group are going to work together to determine the level of engagement that your group will have for your presentation. So we're going to give you guys 60 seconds, and you guys are going to work together, and then I cannot wait to hear what you guys come up with.
Yes, how do we determine like a quantifiable number of engagements?
You rate it 1 out of 100.
Again, one question is trying to explain the audience. You're just collecting information.
30 seconds.
I want you to elaborate. That's where you're trying to find out what situation your presentation is. Does that make sense?
Okay, make it Oh yeah, makes sense.
Okay, who would like to share their tip? Yes. Say that again. They want it to be more interactive. Remind your name. Joanna, congratulations, you win a Dundee.
Okay, for our fourth recommendation, we're going to teach you guys how to stay on track. And so, as you guys all know, we have a lot of information that we need to communicate in all of our presentations. And so it becomes difficult to stay on track when you have so much information. And so one way to stay on track is to use your presentation objective, like Carla mentioned before. You want to use your presentation objectives as an outline to help you maintain focus. After everything you add to your slides or to your presentation, you want to ask yourself, how does this fit into my presentation objective? If it matches, you keep it. If it doesn't, then you ask yourself, well, do our presentation objectives need to be changed? Because as you get new information, sometimes you're going to have to adjust your presentation objectives to fit your new needs. And so again, because we have so much information that we're trying to communicate clearly and get our audience to understand, we need to learn how to highlight the main points and eliminate anything that's extraneous. So you need to figure out what's important, because we can't just throw this fire hydrant of information at you guys and then expect you guys to come away with anything. So as an example of how we stayed on track was we used our presentation objective, and after everything we added to our presentation, we asked ourselves, okay, how does this fit into our presentation? Okay, now if you want to win a Dundee for staying on track, here are some tips you can follow. So create slides with clear and logical bullets. So if you have clear bullets for your slides, you might not even need notes. You can just use your slides as a reference to help you maintain focus and remember your talking points. Another tip to win a Dundee is to script out what you want to say. So earlier, we discussed that while reading off the script is not ideal, writing a script and using it as an exercise to figure out what you will say is a good way to help you prevent loss of your train of thought. So physically writing down what you want to say and then using that as an outline of how you want to structure your verbal presentation is going to be a way you can, it's going to be a tip you can use to help get you to understand what you want to present the day you present. And so our last tip is to eliminate any unnecessary information. Again, we have a lot of information that we need our audience to understand and that we want to communicate. And so we want to eliminate anything that's not necessary and that takes away from the focus of our presentation. So these are some behaviors that you want to avoid if you want to win a Dundee, or if you do not want to win the participant award. So you want to avoid adding exorbitant transitions. And so transitions, if effectively used, can be helpful. Sometimes it's helpful to get piecewise information. However, they can prove as a hindrance. So whenever your slides come spinning in, that can be a distraction not only to the audience but yourself. I remember specifically last year whenever I had my BCOM presentation, I wanted to be cute and I wanted my bullets to come in one after another. However, what happened was there was a lag with the clicker. So I would click on a bullet, it would pop up, it wouldn't pop up. So I would click again and then 2 bullets would pop up. Suddenly I forgot what I was talking about. I froze. And so if you are going to use transitions in your bullets, you need to make sure you're using them effectively. So if you're adding a transition, they have to be adding to your presentation. If there's no added benefit, there's no need for a transition. And all it does is waste time and maybe loses your focus. And so our second tip that we want to avoid is to not rehearse. Obviously, we all need to rehearse because if we don't rehearse, it leads to going off on tangents. Also, if you don't rehearse, you're not comfortable with what you're talking about. And suddenly, there's no focus, and then you can just go off on a different note. Our last tip that we want to avoid is to prepare detailed note cards. Again, so like my notes right here, they're just bullets. And so if you have paragraphs on your notes, suddenly you're going to be reading your notes, and then you're going to be lost in information. If I want to pull out a quick statistic from my notes and I have a paragraph that it's hidden under, I have to decipher all this information, and I might lose my train of thought. I might even forget. I'm already nervous enough as it is, and suddenly I have to read all this information to get to my point. And so it just makes it more difficult. And it results in you just reading off slides and reading off your script. And so now I'll let Lydia go to debrief you on our next checkpoint.
Okay, we are on checkpoint number 4. So as a group, you are all going to give an example of a strategy that you can all incorporate to make sure that you stay on track. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys 45 seconds for this one. Again, please let us know if you have any questions.
Are you guys good?
All right, 15 seconds. Okay, who would like to share their checkpoint 4? Yes.
Recap what you just taught the group.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
I did.
Right. So our last recommendation and the last point we want to make is how to evaluate your success. Evaluating your presentation by using measurables and such that Carla and Eric have said helps you create your own rubric when you're going through your process of creating your general purpose and making sure it aligns with your objectives. You also want to make sure you write all this down. You want to make sure it's on paper, because like a thought today is going to be something tomorrow. Like you're not going to remember the thing that you thought of. Oh, I'm going to talk about this during the presentation, and all of a sudden, presentation time, like me, you forget what you're going to say. All right. You make sure everything's measurable, attainable, and realistic. You want to make sure all your points are something that you can achieve. You want to make sure it's something that's you can measure to a certain extent. And you want to make sure that it is attainable. You want to also use this to evaluate yourself by comparing your own rubric in your presentation. That way you can give yourself your own grade. Make sure that you're hitting what you believe is your A. And what we did, or are doing to evaluate ourselves, is to look at our overall audience engagement. How many of you were asking questions when we're walking around saying you need something? How many of you are writing things down when we ask you to fill out your handouts? And these can lead into some good Dundee winning tips. By setting your results to attainable goals, it helps you create the rubric that you can base the whole presentation off of, allowing you to make sure you have the measurements and your objectives to a point that you're going to feel you're going to be successful with. You want to also develop the rubric to help you focus. Like I said before, and like how Eric and Kyla had said it's best to have everything written down and make sure that you can narrow your own scope when you're creating your presentations. You want to compare to your measured results. So after we're done, we're going to talk amongst ourselves and see how many people we counted paying attention to us, giving us eye contact, who came up and talked to us, who asked the questions, who answered their questions. This helps streamline this can help you streamline creation of your next project. And even helps you use the measurables to create to streamline this project, if you think ahead. Some Dundee losing tips in this regard would be having your targets be unattainable. Your targets are things like, I want to make everyone feel happy. You can't realistically attain that. It also helps you create a broad scope, meaning that you can't really narrow things down and have a concise information. Like Eric was saying, if you have too much information, you can't. There's no way you can get it through. You want to edit. Another Dundee losing tip is if you're editing your results to the work you've already done. If you create more work than you need to, and you want to use all that work, you're going to end up over time, and you're going to have too much information for people to actually digest. And you want to make sure when you're developing your rubric, it's developed to your targets, not the non-targets that you could be setting to. If you're changing your overall rubric to fit the work done. By doing this, you obtain the wrong results for the goals you set. Meaning that if you set your goals to make sure I have at least 50% of you looking at me all the time, you want to make sure that you're looking for that. You have that set in your rubric, and you're not looking at other results while you're measuring yourself. We'll move on to the last, but certainly not least.
Okay, for this one, our fifth and final learning checkpoint, we're going to take 30 seconds. You're going to work with your team to evaluate how you will measure the success of your presentation.
About 15 more seconds.
Okay, who would like to share their, oh, perfect, yes.
Creating a rubric to measure your presentation goals, managing things that are measurable.
All right, sounds good, thank you. Okay, so just to recap everything that you've learned from the second module of the Michael Scott School of Management, today you learned how to define your purpose for your goal, for your training session. As we saw in group 1, their overall purpose was to investigate the audience. They did a very good job of laying out their overall general purpose. The second one, create a presentation objective. This has to be measurable. It has to help you stay on track. Also, make sure you do not give too much information. A great example was group 1 and the survey they conducted beforehand. This was a great measurable objective. The third, determine your level of engagement. Will you sell? Will you tell? Will you do a joint presentation? Those are all questions to ask yourself as you are developing your slides in your presentation outline. The fourth, develop a strategy to stay on track. There is no reason, if you're working on a strategy to sell paper, that you end up talking about how your grandmother crocheted you a blanket for Christmas. That has nothing to do with it. There is no point, so go ahead and get rid of it. The fifth one, evaluate your success. Ask yourself when you're in your presentation, can this actually measure something of attainable data? Does it measure feelings? If it measures feelings, you cannot accurately determine if your audience understood what you were saying and presenting in the presentation. We hope you've enjoyed Module 2 of the Michael Scott School of Management, and hopefully if you have any questions, feel free to ask because we would love to answer them for you. Thank you.